I watched the woman in the diamond necklace snap her fingers at me like I was a dog, demanding I refill her glass immediately. She had no idea that the crystal she was drinking from was part of my personal collection, or that in exactly 10 minutes, her world was about to shatter. If you've ever felt invisible or dismissed because of what you do for a living, you need to hear what happened next. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story proves that karma doesn't just knock, it breaks down the door. Let's get into it. My name is Zofia, and 3 years ago I married my soulmate, Bence. The world knows him as the self-made billionaire who revolutionized the renewable energy industry before he turned 30. What most people don't see is the man who volunteers at food banks on weekends and remembers the names of every person who works in our building. That's actually how we met, in the lobby of his corporate headquarters where I was delivering documents for my former law firm. He held the elevator door for me and we talked for 47 floors. Bence never made a spectacle of his success, and I appreciated that more than he knew. Even after our wedding, I chose to maintain my independence by continuing my work at the Women's Crisis Center downtown. I found more fulfillment helping survivors rebuild their lives than I ever would attending luncheons or shopping on Designer Row. We built a life based on substance, not flash, and it suited us perfectly. But tonight was unavoidable. Tonight marked the biggest fundraising gala of the year at our estate, an event Bence had orchestrated to benefit children's literacy programs throughout the region. He'd invested months into making this evening meaningful, securing donations that would build libraries in underserved communities. The twist that made me smile was knowing that hundreds of the city's elite would be celebrating in our home. Yet most wouldn't recognize me if I stood right in front of them. That's when inspiration struck. Call it a psychological study, call it dangerous curiosity, but I wanted to witness something real. I wanted to see how these pillars of society conducted themselves when they believed nobody consequential was observing. So I made a choice that would expose everything. I would attend the gala, but not as Bence's wife. I would become invisible, just another member of the serving staff. I realize how extreme that sounds, but consider the opportunity. How many chances do we get to see beyond the masks people wear? I borrowed a standard uniform from our head of housekeeping, twisted my hair into a practical knot, and rehearsed the art of blending into the background. Bence was trapped in negotiations across town, completely unaware of my plan. Exactly as I intended, the metamorphosis was startling. With my hair concealed, barely any makeup, and the anonymous black uniform, I became completely unremarkable. I entered through the staff corridor, and not a single person from the actual catering company questioned my presence. Everyone was consumed with preparations for what promised to be an extraordinary evening. When guests started flowing in, I collected a tray of champagne flutes and stepped into the grand hall. The transformation stole my breath despite having watched the decorators work all week. Vintage chandeliers bathed the room in amber light, and arrangements of rare orchids graced every surface. It was breathtaking, and momentarily I felt genuine pride that this reflected our taste. But that sensation evaporated quickly. As I circulated through the crowd presenting champagne to the attendees, I began observing patterns. The way specific individuals looked straight through me as though I possessed no more substance than air. The way they would pluck glasses from my tray without the slightest acknowledgement, never pausing their discussions, as if I were merely furniture. "Pardon me, young woman." A voice cut through the noise. A woman draped in emerald silk caught my attention. Her name was Ursabet, and I knew her from the society columns. "This champagne is practically lukewarm. Can't your people manage even the basics?" I responded with practiced courtesy and volunteered to retrieve a properly chilled glass. She exhaled dramatically and returned to her conversation, dismissing me with an imperial gesture. I swallowed my reaction and moved away, reminding myself that this was precisely the dynamic I wanted to study. But the real performance was only beginning. Enter Victoria, the event coordinator and undisputed empress of the charity establishment. She was a formidable woman approaching 60, adorned in a platinum gown that likely exceeded what most families earned in 6 months. She possessed this particular expression that made you feel microscopic, and regrettably, she had selected me as her target. "You right there," she announced, extending a finger adorned with rings that caught the light. "What do they call you?" "Zofia," I answered, maintaining steady eye contact. "Well, Zofia, I sincerely hope your performance exceeds that of this incompetent crew. Do you notice how pathetically slow these hors d'oeuvres are circulating? It's completely unacceptable. This is an elite gathering, not some provincial picnic." I acknowledged her concerns and promised my complete effort, but Victoria was far from finished with me. Throughout the following hour, she discovered imperfections in my every action. How I balanced the tray, how I approached the guests, even how I positioned myself during inactive moments. She clearly derived satisfaction from having someone to dominate. The other attendees seemed to interpret Victoria's behavior as permission. If she could mistreat the staff, then apparently such conduct was socially acceptable. I observed as ostensibly cultured, highly educated individuals devolved into privileged tyrants the instant they assumed no one significant was paying attention. "These prawns are barely above room temperature," protested a man wearing a suit that probably cost 5 figures. "Don't you staff understand basic food safety? I'm not contributing my resources to consume tepid seafood." I resisted informing him that he wasn't contributing anything, that this was charitable fundraising, but I maintained my composure. Instead, I apologized and offered to bring him a fresh selection. He seized it from my grasp without uttering a syllable of appreciation. As the hours accumulated, the degradation intensified. Guests would interrupt me mid-sentence when I attempted to serve them. They crafted jokes about staff intelligence, presuming we couldn't comprehend their sophisticated humor. Several made observations about how people in our position should feel fortunate for the employment. The tipping point arrived when another server reported ill without warning. Victoria was livid, and she required someone to assume kitchen responsibilities. "Can you predict her selection?" "Zofia," she declared, "you're being reassigned to dishwashing duties. We're operating below capacity, and someone must ensure the kitchen functions efficiently." I studied her momentarily, processing her directive. Here I stood in my own residence being commanded to scrub dishes by a woman who remained oblivious that she was standing in my ballroom. "My assignment was front-of-house service," I replied deliberately, "not kitchen sanitation." Victoria's expression hardened. "Listen carefully, dear. You'll perform whatever tasks I assign. This is a professional operation, and I won't tolerate some part-time employee challenging my decisions. Now proceed to that kitchen and begin cleaning, or you can seek employment elsewhere." The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath around us. Other guests had abandoned their conversations to observe the confrontation. I sensed their attention, anticipating my response. Some appeared entertained, others uncomfortable, yet nobody intervened. I inhaled deeply and proceeded toward the kitchen, not from intimidation, but because I wanted to discover the limits. I wanted to witness exactly how callous people could become when they believed their actions carried no repercussions. The kitchen resembled a war zone. Dishes climbed in mountains beside the sink, and the commercial dishwasher operated continuously. I pushed up my sleeves and began washing, my hands rapidly becoming irritated from the scalding water and industrial detergent. Through the service window, I could observe the guests laughing and dancing, completely disconnected from the labor that made their evening flawless. But Victoria hadn't exhausted her authority yet. She kept returning to the kitchen, discovering fresh methods to demonstrate her dominance. She critiqued my washing methodology, complained about service delays, and made cutting remarks about my capacity to handle genuine responsibility. "You should understand something," she mentioned during one inspection. "I've been coordinating functions like this for over 2 decades. I can identify problematic employees instantly. You possess an attitude issue, and that won't serve you in this industry." I continued my work, allowing her words to dissolve like the soap around my hands. She remained completely ignorant that she was addressing the woman who resided in this house, who had personally authorized every element of this event, who could eliminate her from every charity function in the city with one conversation. However, the ultimate challenge to my restraint came when Ursabet, the woman in emerald, decided to join Victoria in the kitchen. She was moderately intoxicated and feeling emboldened. "Oh, this is absolutely priceless," she laughed, observing me scrubbing plates. Look at our little server, demoted to manual labor. I imagine you never anticipated this scenario when you started your day. I glanced up at her, my hands still submerged in suds. Actually, I find authentic work deeply rewarding. Ursabet's expression contorted into contempt. Authentic work? Is that your characterization? Sweetheart, this isn't authentic work. This is what individuals do when they've exhausted their alternatives. This is what people do when they lack the intelligence or attractiveness for anything meaningful. Her declaration struck me like a physical assault, not because it wounded me personally, but because I recognized she genuinely believed her statement. She authentically thought a person's value was dictated by their professional title or financial portfolio. You want my honest assessment, Ursabet continued, encouraged by my silence. I think you're likely some university failure who couldn't survive in the competitive world. I'd wager you're surviving payment to payment, probably unable to afford even a modest apartment. People like you are entirely replaceable. Victoria chuckled and expressed agreement. She's entirely correct. I've witnessed countless young women like you appear and disappear. No ambition whatsoever, no determination, no prospects. This is probably the pinnacle of your career trajectory. I stood there, my hands dripping with soapy water, and I reached a conclusion. I was finished with this social experiment. I was finished being degraded in my own residence. I was finished observing these people reveal their authentic, repulsive character. But before I could speak, I detected a familiar voice calling from the hall. Excuse me, has anyone encountered my wife? I'm searching for Zofia. My pulse accelerated. Bence had arrived. Victoria and Ursabet exchanged bewildered expressions. They possessed no comprehension of what was unfolding, but they sensed something monumental was approaching. Your wife, Victoria called out, advancing toward the ballroom. Sir, I have no idea what you're referencing. There's nobody here by that name except one of the service workers. I heard Bence's footsteps nearing the kitchen, and I understood the charade was concluding. I dried my hands on a towel and turned to face Ursabet and Victoria, who appeared increasingly confused. Actually, I stated, my voice composed and clear, there absolutely is someone here by that name. Bence materialized in the kitchen entrance, his eyes immediately locating mine. He appeared confused, absorbing my uniform and the dish water on my hands. Momentarily, he couldn't process what he was witnessing. Zofia, he said, his voice laden with concern. What are you doing in the kitchen? Why are you dressed this way? I smiled at my husband, the man who had constructed an empire yet still regarded me as though I were the center of his universe. Hello, darling. I was simply getting better acquainted with our guests. The realization struck Bence like electricity. His expression transformed from confusion to comprehension to barely restrained fury. He looked at Victoria and Ursabet, who stood frozen in the entrance. Allow me to clarify, he said, his voice dangerously soft. You've had my wife washing dishes in our own kitchen. Victoria's complexion turned ashen. Your wife, but she's merely a server. She's part of the catering personnel. No, Bence said, stepping closer and taking my damp hands in his. She's Zofia Kovacs, my wife of 3 years and co-owner of this estate. She's also one of the most compassionate, brilliant women you'll ever encounter, though I suspect you've already squandered that opportunity. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Ursabet's face had transitioned from flushed to sickly pale, and Victoria appeared on the verge of collapse. I could detect the murmur of conversation diminishing in the ballroom as other guests began sensing something significant was transpiring. Bence turned to address the expanding crowd in the doorway. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce my wife, Zofia. She chose to experience this evening's event from an alternative vantage point, and I believe we've all discovered something valuable about our true nature. The crowd separated as Bence guided me into the ballroom, still clasping my hands. I could observe the recognition materializing on face after face. The woman they had disregarded, dismissed, and humiliated was the lady of the manor. Zofia wanted to observe how our guests would treat someone they perceived as inferior. Bence continued, his voice resonating across the silent ballroom. I'm profoundly disappointed to report that many of you failed that evaluation spectacularly. Victoria stumbled forward, her expression desperate. Mr. Kovacs, I had absolutely no knowledge. If I had realized her identity, I would never have, I was simply attempting to maintain the event's standards. Precisely, I said, finally unleashing my voice. You treated me abominably because you assumed I was merely a server. But here's the reality, Victoria. I am merely a server tonight. The sole distinction is that I possess the luxury of choice. The woman who would have been scrubbing those dishes if I hadn't been there deserves identical respect to what you'd offer me now. Ursabet attempted to disappear into the crowd, but Bence's voice halted her. Ursabet, I believe you had some observations to share about people like my wife, about university failures and people without ambition. For clarification, Zofia holds a master's degree in social psychology from Oxford, and she chooses to work at a crisis center because she believes in creating meaningful change. The mortification on Ursabet's face was almost painful to witness, but I wasn't finished. The renewable energy contract your husband has been pursuing with my corporation, Bence continued, consider it terminated. We prefer collaborating with individuals who align with our principles. The domino effect was instantaneous. Other guests who had been discourteous to me throughout the evening began to panic, realizing their behavior might carry consequences. Some attempted to approach me with apologies, but the damage was irreversible. I need everyone to comprehend something, I said, addressing the assembly. The way you treated me tonight reflects how you treat people constantly, your restaurant servers, your housekeepers, your parking attendants. They all deserve identical respect you'd extend to anyone else. Their occupations don't diminish their value as human beings. Bence squeezed my hand. The literacy program we're supporting tonight assists children from every background imaginable. Some of their parents might be servers, dishwashers, or custodians. How can we claim to support these children while condescending to their families? The evening adopted a completely transformed atmosphere afterward. Some guests departed early, too mortified to remain. Others approached me with authentic apologies, and I could observe they were genuinely reconsidering their conduct. A few even shared their personal experiences of times when they'd been mistreated because of their appearance or occupation. Victoria lost her status as the preferred event coordinator for the charity circuit. Information traveled rapidly in their social spheres, and her reputation never recovered. Ursabet's husband's business experienced substantial losses when other corporations, following Bence's example, decided they preferred not to associate with that caliber of attitude. But the most significant transformation was in the individuals who authentically learned from that evening. I received countless messages from guests who acknowledged the experience had compelled them to reconsider how they treated service workers. Some even began volunteering at community organizations, working alongside people they might have previously dismissed. As for me, I learned something as well. I learned that my privilege carries obligation. I learned that sometimes you must be willing to step outside your comfort zone to catalyze change. And I learned that the most effective weapon against prejudice is simply reflecting people's own behavior back to them. The following morning, Bence and I sat in our kitchen drinking coffee and reviewing the news coverage of the event. The story had developed its own momentum, with people sharing their personal experiences of being judged based on appearance or occupation. Do you have any regrets? Bence asked, looking at me over his coffee cup. I considered it momentarily. No, I said finally. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret executing it. Those people needed to see themselves accurately, and sometimes that requires a mirror. Bence smiled and reached across the table to take my hand. I'm incredibly proud of you, he said. You could have revealed your identity the instant someone was rude to you. You could have leveraged your position to avoid the discomfort, but you chose to experience what millions of people experience daily. That's the essence of privilege. It's not merely about possessing wealth or status. It's about having options. I had the option to abandon that kitchen whenever I desired. I had the option to reveal my identity and terminate the mistreatment. Most people in service occupations don't possess those options. This story reminds us that we never truly know who we're really engaging with. Treat everyone with kindness and respect because you never know when karma might come knocking at your door. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button, Share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories that will change how you see the world. What would you have done in Zofia's situation? Let me know in the comments below.